You might have already seen this, and if you haven't, you need to, but even if you have already seen it, this story goes a lot deeper than you might think, and we're going to get into it today, but without further ado, let's get into the clip and then we'll break it down.
Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper, that's not appropriate. And that's not how the way the conversation was conducted. If there is sincerity on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to continue.
Let's create the conditions first.
So we see the president of China here, Xi Jinping, talking to Justin Trudeau and saying, hey, what the hell, you leaked all of these details from our conversation to the media and we don't like that. But let's get into more detail on exactly what was said there in case you missed some of it, as well as what Xi was so upset about what Justin Trudeau said and the context that's around all of this right now, as well as some reactions from some members of parliament back home.
Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper, that's not appropriate.
Okay, so first thing here he says is everything we've discussed has been leaked to the paper, the Canadian media, and that is not appropriate, but what exactly has been leaked here? And it seems that when he says leaks, he's referring to this article from The Guardian that goes over a number of things that were said between Trudeau and Xi Jinping in their first 10-minute meeting at the beginning of the G20 summit, which they're currently at. That clip that we're looking at now is at the end of it, where he's sort of scolding him for these details being leaked, but let's get into what these details are. Trudeau's main concern that he brought up with Xi was the interference activities, and this refers to three individual things. The first is a report that the Chinese government was able to funnel money to 11 members of parliament during their election campaigns during the 2019 election. If you want more detail on that whole situation, I go into a lot more depth in it in this video that you can find on the channel. Also, last month, the federal police announced that they were researching something that they've called Chinese police stations that are being set up in Canada, as well as a third element here, which is that a battery researcher from Hydro-Quebec has been charged with espionage, saying that he's trying to leak Canadian intellectual property to the Chinese on how to make more efficient energy. So this is why China seems to be pissed off, and it's why this video is kind of interesting, because it seems like it wasn't scheduled to be something that was actually filmed, at least from the camera sort of running up here at the beginning of the clip. But let's continue here.
And that's not how the way the conversation was conducted. If there is sincerity on your part.
So he gets interrupted there and Trudeau starts talking, but I've actually got a translation here of what was said. So the second half of this quote is what was sort of talked over by Trudeau in the second half of the clip. But what Xi was saying was, and furthermore, that's not the way the conversation went. If you're sincere, we should communicate with each other in a respectful manner. Otherwise, it will be hard to say what the result will be like. Kind of sounds like some sort of veiled threat here. Then Trudeau responds.
We believe in free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to continue.
So Trudeau says, in Canada, we believe in free and open, frank dialogue, which we'll continue to have, and we will continue to, we would like to continue to work constructively together, but there will be things that we will continue to disagree on. Now, this is very similar to what Trudeau said to the Canadian press when he was asked, hey, are you going to bring up these issues of interference with Xi when you meet him?
He accused you of leaking the contents of a conversation that you two had on the sidelines of the G20. I'm just wondering, why was President Xi so upset? Was this a misunderstanding? Did you offer him some kind of assurances that you wouldn't talk about this?
First of all, not every conversation is always going to be easy, but it's extremely important that we continue to stand up for the things that are important for Canadians. This is something we always do, and we will continue to. I highlighted areas in which we can and should be working together, at the same time as I highlighted areas of mutual concern. I also highlighted things of preoccupations to Canadians, like the question of interference with our citizens, and highlighted that it's important that we be able to have dialogue about this. But part of our values as Canadians is being open and frank about the conversations we have, keeping Canadians involved and apprised of what it is that we're doing and the conversations we're having here, and that's exactly what I did.
Now let's go to the last little bit of this breakdown of the actual clip, and then we'll get into some responses from members of parliament.
Yeah, found out better.
Let's create the conditions first.
Okay, so Xi sort of finishes up with him there and saying we have to create the right conditions first to be able to actually work together. Sort of Xi saying, hey, if we're not doing this in a way that I want to be doing this, we're not going to be able to work together here. Now, some think that Trudeau came out of this encounter looking kind of good, standing up for Canadians and sort of confronting Xi. Some people say that he was too weak here, and some people say that it was rather convenient that there was a camera here, especially when all of these allegations are coming out in Canada about the interference of the Chinese government, to have an opportunity like this to show you standing up to Xi. But let's get into what some of the members of parliament have said. First, we'll take a look at one of the Liberal members of parliament, and then we're going to take a look at the Conservative critique.
At least my take, is the Prime Minister speaking clearly and loudly about, making sure that Canada's interests are well registered by the Chinese leadership. That's what I saw when I saw the image of the Prime Minister, is him making the case for Canada and saying what is unacceptable. I was not present, but what I'm pleased about is that the Prime Minister standing up, as he always does for Canada, and standing up for our position and saying that, as I've seen in the press report, that we won't tolerate these type of things with respect to interference.
We're told, if we watch the video, that Trudeau approached Xi and talked about foreign interference in our elections. That was the thing that prompted the conversation. What do you make of that, and how Mr. Xi responded?
Well, I think the Prime Minister needs to be telling Canadians about who the 11 candidates were that received illicit funds from Beijing, funneled through the consulate in Toronto. Are they members of the House of Commons? Are they candidates in the next federal election? Canadians deserve answers. And so instead of having private conversations with President Xi, whose government has meddled in our democracy, Prime Minister needs to be accountable to this House and publicly tell Canadians who these 11 candidates are, so that we can take action to ensure that this doesn't happen again in the future.
So we have one Liberal MP saying, hey, well, Trudeau's kind of standing up to Xi here. He's standing up for Canadian rights and saying that clearly this meddling in Canadian elections isn't acceptable. While we have the Conservative member of Parliament on the other side saying, okay, it's all good and well that you're saying that this isn't acceptable, but you've been briefed back in January on who these 11 candidates were that received money, so why aren't you telling us? Again, I'll link the video once more here so you can check it out, so you can get more context on that whole situation. Of course, there is the argument for national security, and this is what the Liberals are constantly saying, that we can't release these documents, we can't release the information that was inside of this brief because it would be, other countries would get that information and we don't want them to have it, and we think we could solve this problem more easily if this information is kept private. But I'm curious what you think about this whole exchange. Do you think that Trudeau came out of it looking stronger on a national relations level or a little bit weaker? What do you think about the reactions on it? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one, and if you haven't already done so, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I've been coming out with these videos almost daily for the past few weeks, so if you appreciate that, hit the subscribe button so you can follow along with more videos like this in the future. But with all that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.